Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Dizzle and AP. Dizzle and AP. What? Trying to send this
Yeah, and
tell
we
everyone
are
we're live.
live. And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet.
What happened
Together,
to your intro?
you were doing the intro. You were
Okay, we're
doing
good
it
then.
perfectly well. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to replace it. I think it was pretty good. Yeah.
Nice.
I'll quickly ask the chat if they also think it was very nice. I think everyone will think, do it with David's singing from now on, not with your intro. Replace it because it was amazing. 10 out of 10. Tell me, people, if what you think about it. And
See, if you were doing the melody, then I could drop a beat, and then we could do our intro like that. We got a third guy in here to kick off some funky, fresh lyrics. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Somebody said it was horrible. Someone said this was the new intro is like Mongolian throat singing or something like that. Nobody said it's horrible, but somebody said something with Mongolian throat singing, so that's good. Anyway, today we are here on the most watched show in the world once again, with the goat and the one who slaughters and eats goats. And it's up to you to figure out who is who in this situation. But today it's Apostate Prophet and David Wood again on a Saturday show talking about very interesting things.
You never slaughtered a goat.
Did you?
No, but I would.
Okay,
I've
fine.
slaughtered other things.
Rachel Jones said, "AP, anyone tell you that you look like Shaky Booty?" I have no idea what you're talking about. The guy's
there's a resemblance.
The guy looks nothing like me. David, what do we want to talk about today?
Your buddy Hamza Yusuf, who I wasn't really. I mean, I've obviously heard of him like a ton of times over the years because he's a very popular Muslim speaker. What does he run? Does he run? He runs one of those Muslim organizations like, is it Zaytuna or?
Yeah, I think he's the founder of Zaytuna College, which is an accredited college now in America that teaches Islamic stuff. I think that's what I am aware of.
Yeah, and I don't remember what I watched in the past, but I've seen a couple of clips of him over the years talking about various things. But seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, I actually knew about Hamza Yusuf before I knew about any of these other bozos on that defend Islam, the ones that we frequently talk about. I knew about him because I heard of him when I was still a Muslim, and I thought that he was okay, he was cool, he was closer to how I thought and believed when I was a Muslim, because he's not a Salafi traditionalist. He's more a mystical Islamic
philosophical type person.
Philosophical, who follows, I think, a Sufi, which is Islamic mysticism way, and you could say his views are not very much, especially politically, socially, not very much in alignment with the views of the traditionalist boys. Like,
yeah, it's brilliant though. Like, I mean, he's part of the bait and switch. Not that that's his intention. I'm just saying that's what Islam does. It puts forward these guys who are very appealing, right? Because I mean, he's talking to Jordan Peterson, and he's making Islam sound really, really nice and great for the world. And so you could be watching that, because I mean, most of Jordan Peterson's viewers probably know very little about Islam. So if you're watching this, wow, this sounds like this guy's putting together a very interesting case. I hadn't really thought of that. And so you can see why people convert to Islam based on personalities they like, and then you get in, and then it's slaughter the unbeliever in the name of Allah, will destroy you too,
your boy.
yeah, boy. And that's sort of we'll probably come back to that, but I mean, at the end of the day, what kind of Islam eventually, or do you eventually have to deal with, right? In other words, suppose that the numbers keep growing, and suppose Islam eventually like has a majority of the world's population. What type of Islam are Christians and Jews and Hindus and atheists going to have to deal with? Is it going to be Hamza Yusuf's nice, friendly Islam, or is it going to be, Sheikh Asim al-Hakim's door-to-door, convert, pay the jizya, or die Islam? And I happen to believe that one of those you actually find in the Muslim sources. And it ain't Hamza Yusuf's version.
Yeah. Sam Shamoon here actually added further specifications about Hamza Yusuf's Islamic beliefs and put it in words that I did not put it in because it's all over the place in my head right now. He is somebody who, despite his very rude nature, I'm talking of Sam Shamoon, can put some words together in a useful way when he's not angrily ranting and yelling at people. So he said that Hamza Yusuf is a Sufi who follows Tawassul Ashari Maturidi. I'm not sure what exactly he follows there, but anyway, he's a Sufi who follows Tawassul, which is a concept of getting closer to Allah spiritually through spiritual guidance and leadership and stuff like that. And he is very his beliefs and positions are very anti-Salafi and anti-Wahhabi, anti-traditionalist. So yeah, thanks, Sam, for adding that.
And there's a part in his interview where he talks about, it's interesting because Hamza Yusuf's dad, I think he said his dad was a professor of philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a philosophical. So Hamza has he was just apparently raised to think philosophically about various things. But yeah, it's just interesting because this seems to be the approach of Islam. It's put forward the people who are most likely to be liked by the target audience, even if they don't line up with Islam, and then get some converts based on that, and then introduce those converts to the real representatives of Islam, which tend to be, Salafi types.
Yeah. I also want to address very quickly, actually, something that just happened. We were planning on talking about this, but then I saw yesterday that our dear friend Daniel Hikikichu, who is the opposite of Hamza Yusuf, made a tweet in which he was blasting Hamza Yusuf. And
why would he do that?
Because he's a very passionate believer of traditional Islam, al-Islam. And I want to quickly have a look.
So basically, sounds like Daniel is objecting to the bait and switch, right? Don't do the switch. Tell people what Islam really is and let them convert based on that. Don't bait them in with these false representatives of what Islam really teaches. And keep in mind, this isn't a criticism of Hamza Yusuf. Seems like a genuinely very nice, friendly guy who's spent his life thinking deeply about religious and philosophical issues. But yeah, the idea that this is an accurate representation of Islam. I mean, think, AP, if you read the Quran and you read Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, Ibn Asaq, and you said, let me look around at who is an accurate reflection of the teachings of Muhammad and the Quran, is a better reflection the people who flip out and murder someone over a mere rumor of burning the Quran, or is it, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf?
Yeah, of course, it's Sheikh Hamza Yusuf.
That's the
problem. So I want to quickly go into this reaction. I want to start with this. Actually, David suggested we should maybe start with this because he's actually in charge here. I'm not. So here's very nicely Daniel Kikichu making a tweet about Hamza Yusuf, the guy that we are supposed to talk about today. It says Hamza Yusuf's very disturbing interfaith speech. Here you can get a little peek into how Hamza Yusuf actually thinks and what kind of Islam he presents. So this is a video prepared by Daniel Kikichu. I bet I didn't activate the sound sharing here again, so I will quickly do that.
Always amateur hour with AV.
Okay, now fixed.
I want to thank Rabbi Michael for contacting me, asking me to come. One of the things that our Abrahamic traditions suffer from is exclusivism. Many of the peoples that adhere to Abrahamic teachings, whether they be Jews, Christians, or Muslims, tend to see themselves as having some monopoly on the truth. Arrogating the voice of God to oneself is probably the most dangerous and really the capital sin of people that claim God. God has many voices, and to claim any one voice to be the exclusive voice of God is a very dangerous thing to do.
God has many voices, and claim any one voice to be the exclusive voice of God is a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah. It is dangerous.
Dangerous?
Dangerous.
Is this dangerous, Mr.
It says
Hamza Yusuf?
dangerous. Daniel asked a very important question here. Is this dangerous, Mr. Hamza Yusuf? The Quran.
What did Daniel say about it? I missed what
he prepared this video, but he also said.
Is that it? Or?
He also said Hamza Yusuf's very disturbing
interfaith speech.
So he finds this very, very disturbing. And he also gave one example. He only gave one example from the Quran, but the Quran also says, aside from indeed the religion in the sight of Allah is Islam, it also says that whoever seeks a religion other than Islam will be never be accepted. Yeah, it will never be accepted of him. That's what the Quran says. So the Quran itself is actually makes that whole claim that it is the only truth and all the others are unacceptable, wrong, bound to hell. It specifically says that those who worship Jesus as God will go to hell and stay there forever. It says so in chapter 4 in a series of verses addressed to Christians about the worship of Jesus around the verses, so chapter 5 verse 70 to 75 or something in that range. So I agree with Daniel here that Islam definitely is exclusivist, and that Islam itself makes the claim to be the only truth and others are wrong. But here Hamza Yusuf comes and gives a speech in which he argues that that is a very dangerous view.
I say they're both right, but for different periods in the history of Muhammad and different periods in the revelation of the Quran. You do go to passages of the Quran that say, hey, Jews, Christians, Muslims, you're all good. In fact, Surah 5 verse 48, that comes at the end of a passage where Allah says, Jews, you have to judge by the Torah. Christians, you judge by the gospel. Muslims, we judge by the Quran. And it says that Allah wants these different religious communities so that they can compete with each other in good works. So that sounds like something that Hamza Yusuf would be focusing on. You see, it's very religiously pluralistic and so on. Problem is that's not those aren't the final marching orders in the Quran. You eventually get to, no, actually Jews and Christians have to be violently subjugated. They can, as long as they accept their inferior status and pay tribute money to the Muslim community, since they have some true revelation, they can continue their religious traditions as long as they keep paying the money, like, to the mafia for protection money. And everyone else has to be violently subjugated. So looks like Daniel's just looking at, okay, what were the final marching orders? And yeah, very, very exclusivistic. Everyone has to be either convert or be subjugated. So it is a Sheikh Asim al-Hakim version of Islam. But before Muhammad got to that, he did seem to think, hey, I'm in the same tradition of prophets that, you know, the Jews and Christians have. So we're all on the same page here. So we're all good. It's us versus the polytheists.
Hey, monotheists, come here. We are all upon the truth. Let us unite. I am a prophet just like your prophets. Come on, guys.
Oh, wait, you didn't accept me as a prophet? You all have to die. And Sheikh Hamza Yusuf goes right to the, oh, look at this. They're all, hey, Christians, Muslims, Jews, we're all friends here. This is
Let's
good.
all be friends, guys. But here's
We can't be friends.
So Sam Shimoon thanks added the actual reference, which is Quran chapter 5 verse 72, in which it says, they have certainly disbelieved who say Allah is the Messiah, the son of Mary, while the Messiah has said, O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Lord and your Lord. Indeed, he who associates others with Allah, Allah has forbidden him paradise, and his refuge is the fire, and there are not for the wrongdoers any helpers. So according to this verse, the Christians who believe that Jesus is God are definitely wrong and will definitely go to hell and burn there forever and so on. So this is clearly expressed here, right? So
and Surah in Surah 9. So you got Surah 9 verse 29, which is the command to violently to violently subjugate Jews and Christians. But the very next verse, which gives the justification for violently subjugating us, it says Christians call Jesus the Son of God, and Jews call Ezra the Son of God, which isn't even true. But notice, so I mean, I have no idea what Hamza Yusuf would say in response to this. The Quran says we have to be violently subjugated because we say Jesus is the Son of God. So is it only Christians who don't believe Jesus is the Son of God who are okay, and we can be part of this plural? Because that's the impression that you would, that's the impression that you would get from the Quran, is that there's this, you know, maybe there are Christians somewhere who don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, which makes you can't get to that position from Scripture, because Jesus is called, he's identified as the Son by the Father, by the Holy Spirit, by himself, by the angel Gabriel, by the prophet John the Baptist, by his apostles, by the even the demons, when he was casting them out, would say, "You're the Son of God," right? So like everyone who could possibly identify him as the Son of God identifies him as the Son of God. And the only people who didn't call him the Son of God were his opponents among the Jews. And even they said, when they're criticizing him, that he was claiming to be the Son of God. And that was part of the justification for being against him. So like everyone from a biblical perspective, everyone we know about was either identifying him as the Son of God or saying that he was at least claiming to be the Son of God, even if they rejected the claim. And then, of course, you know, several centuries later, an illiterate caravan robber comes along and says, what? How can he have a son when he has no wife? Even though that's not what anyone means when they call him Son of God. And then Muslims go, oh, yes, it's so brilliant. Oh, what a great point, huh? And But at the end of the day, so anyway, the point was, you are supposed to subjugate Christians because we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. There's no way you can interpret Scripture to not mean that. And therefore, any Christian who actually believes in the Scriptures at all has to conclude that Jesus is the Son of God. And so doesn't.
And when it comes to the Jews, only those few Jews who don't believe that Ezra is the Son of God are spared.
Hey, Jews should make a video and say, hey, since none of us say that, we're all good.
Yeah, perfect.
And you know what's interesting there, because Muslims, I'm sure you've encountered this when you bring this up. Hey, wait a minute, the Quran is saying that Jews call Ezra the Son of God. Who in the world is this responding to? The response from Muslims is maybe there was some group in Arabia. I think Shabir Ali said maybe it was just one guy. Maybe it was just one guy who called Ezra the Son of God. And yet this is what Allah responds to and provide the justification for violently subjugating Jews. But the thing is, that explanation doesn't work, because even in the Hadith, Muhammad's talking about at the judgment, Allah is going to be asking Jews about why they took Ezra as the son of Allah and so on. So the author of the Quran apparently believes that Jews in general worship Ezra, whom they identify as the son of God, in a parallel sense, in a way that is parallel to the way Christians call Jesus the son of God. And it's like
many people are not aware of this, but this is seriously, really, in several hadiths, in the authentic sources in Sahih al-Bukhari. The story is told where Muhammad says that on the day of judgment, the Jews will come forth and Allah will bring the Christians forth. And he will ask the Christians what they believed in. They will say, we believe that Jesus is God and he is the son of God. So here it says, the Christians will be called upon. It will be said to them, who do you used to worship? They will say, we used to worship Jesus, the son of Allah. It will be said to them, you are liars, for he has never taken a wife or a son. So this is pretty much, accurate in terms of what Christians believe in. But then here, Muhammad also says, then the Jews will be called upon, and it will be said to them, who did you used to worship? They will say, we used to worship Ezra, the son of Allah. And it will be said to them, you are liars, for Allah has never taken a wife or a son. So this is allegedly, according to Muhammad, what Allah will say to Jews, not just certain Jews, not just to one Jew,
in
to
general,
Jews.
the group.
And Jews will say, we used to worship Ezra.
And again, it's parallel to Christians in that you could just say it. You can just say this of the entire group, when we have zero record of any Jew ever worshiping Ezra and calling him the son of God. And yet that's the main accusation. What's amazing is like what in the world does Muhammad have to say? Like, how wrong does he have to be? I mean, he's saying something that is completely false. This is something we should like reenact. like we should dramatize this. And it's what did you used to worship? And they're like, God, wrong. You worship Ezra. Like, wait, what? Huh? Wait, what's this guy? What are you talking about? Yes, you did it. When? We never have. Yes, you did. Muhammad said you did. So
it is. I mean, really, man. It's not only in the Quran; it's also confirmed here in the Hadith. And for some reason, somehow Muhammad got this idea. Maybe there were some Jews around him that didn't make it into any records who believed such things, and he took that as a general Jewish belief and included it in the Quran, and also spoke about it here according to these Hadiths. And that just shows the complete ignorance of Muhammad and the author of the Quran, who is, of course, the all-knowing Allah, of what people actually believe in. And this, I really feel like this is just one of those instances, and this evidence alone is proof that Islam is false.
Yeah, and I mean, this happens over and over again. So notice you have sort of a couple of different categories. You have Jewish and Christian mainstream beliefs that are based on their scriptures. And you find some of that in the Quran. Then you have Jewish and Christian beliefs that are from later strange and even heretical sources, like late sources that aren't authentic, and that no one would take as actual historical beliefs and so on. And those, we find those in there, but there are those that we can actually trace and we know where they come from, and they're not authentic, and yet Muhammad and Allah believe in them. And then there's this further category where we can't find it anywhere. We have no idea where it's coming from because we have no record of it anywhere at all. But the Quran attributes that to the groups just as much as the stuff that's like in their scripture, or just as much as the stuff that we can even trace to heretical sources. These are things we can't trace to any source. We have no clue what they're talking about. And the Quran will still attribute that to them just as much as anything else. And it's weird. It's weird stuff how you look at all that and go, yep.
Totally. Makes sense. Yep.
Yep.
This is the truth. No problem at all. Everything is accurate. Truth. Anyway, what we want to do now is we want to have a look at this conversation between this guy Hamza Yusuf and Jordan Peterson, an interview in which Hamza Yusuf sat down and explained Islam to Jordan Peterson because Jordan Peterson doesn't know anything about Islam. He still doesn't. And he only had one question: what is Islam and what can we learn from Islam and the Quran?
Now, was this was after the hijab interview, right? Muhammad hijab.
Yeah.
That's probably how this ended up happening, right? It's some Muslims put forward Muhammad hijab. Jordan Peterson, you have to interview Muhammad hijab. And okay, I'll do that, right? And then a lot of Muslims, nicer Muslims were probably like, oh no, we don't want everyone to think that this hijab guy is the representative of Islam. This guy running around tearing his shirt off in front of embassies and talking about, all the unbelieving women he's going to rape and stuff like that. The guy who's, says if you just go with the Quran, you'd assume you can have sex with a 5-year-old. Probably, no, we need someone a little different to put forward. And so that's probably some other Muslims probably put forward. Hamza Yusuf said, that's the guy you have to interview if you want to know about Islam.
You know what I find it is disappointing? I told Michaela to invite Daniel Kikichu and let him explain Islam to Jordan Peterson and her.
That'd be great.
They never.
I second that. That's who you should. That's who you should get. I'm not even joking. Get Daniel Kikichu, because I mean.
I'm serious. I did that. I'm serious. I really told her to invite him, to invite Daniel Kikichu. I told Daniel Kikichu he has a YouTube channel named Muslim Skeptic. I'm serious. I'm not joking. I said that to her.
I second that nomination because you got Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, who seems sincere, but he's clearly not examining Islam the way other people in his religion, his co-religionists, examine the same scriptures. But even like Muhammad hijab and Ali Dawah, even though they occasionally admit certain things, like Ali Dawah admitting he wants to behead you and stuff, they're still some of the biggest liars on the planet. They're still lying a lot about Islam in order to make it appealing to a Western audience. Whereas Daniel, he just bites the bullet. No, I'm gonna tell you exactly what we teach on this. And he'll try to rationalize and defend it. But yes, you'd get a much more accurate picture of authentic Islam from Daniel than you get from Hamza Yusuf. Even though most people, if you had to pick someone as your neighbor, would go with Hamza Yusuf.
Yeah, definitely. Unless you want to live in a wild world. All right. Here. This phase is a summary of Jordan Peterson in front of Islam. And
Jordan Peterson, seen here listening to what Islam is from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf.
Sheikh Hamza Yusuf.
Wait, this is a long lecture.
Yeah, there are specific places that you want to address, right? So is there anything that you want to go to?
Go through those labels at the bottom. Go to the stuff on Islam being go more other way. Go to the there's a short section on there you go, collectivist philosophies. That's interesting stuff. He's like, Islam is for the individual against the group. Don't follow the group. Don't follow the group. This is so interesting. This is so funny.
I haven't actually listened to this part, so this will be new for me as well. Why? Okay.
There is an hour of the day. It's called amateur hour. It is from 8 to 9 p.m. apparently.
Human dignity. So those 6 things, there's no ruling in Islam that isn't addressing one of those 6 preservations. And so everything that we do is for that's the way in which we try to live our lives. So family, being good to family, taking care of those in need around you first and foremost. Charity begins at home, and then extending to those closest to you. So Islam is antagonistic to socialism. It's antagonistic to any kind of collectivist philosophy.
Oh my goodness!
Each one of us should be giving something back.
What?
So yeah, they're about to go into this, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure he knows what collectivism means, right? I don't
guys,
understand.
For because not everyone does, but a collectivist mentality or collectivist group, that's the idea that the needs of the group are more important than the needs of the individual. And so if you ever have to decide what's beneficial to the group or the individual, you go with the needs of the group. I mean, but think about this in light of, I mean, one, in light of Islam, but even think of the popular da'is. Ali Dawa, he's the one who was saying, because the needs of the community are more important than your rights, right? I mean, he's specifically saying that the rights and needs of the community are more important than, your desire for whatever you want. And that's the justification for chopping your head off, right? If you're going to go preach something other than Islam, your head has to be chopped off, because you would be in conflict with the group. Well, guess what? That is what Islam teaches. Yes, you have to constantly be killing or lashing or whatever you're going to do to people who are going to cause a problem for the group. So it's just amazing that Islam is against collectivist groups. Why? Now here, because again, Hamza Yusuf seems to be sincere. He doesn't seem like he's trying to trick everyone, but it's just interesting that he's talking to a guy who really has a problem with collectivism and collectivist groups. Yeah. And he brings that forward as a defense. So I mean, I don't know. I guess he really believes it, but what in the world?
But that just seems like one of those instances.
So many of us spend so much time.
Okay.
He's got a point.
God, threw me off. So it just seems kind of sleazy, deceitful of Hamza Yusuf to be, even in this case, even when he is one of those guys who are nicer, who are friendlier, and who are more on the side of peace, you would say, in comparison to the traditionalists. He is also an opportunist in this case, it looks like, and brings up things that Jordan Peterson will probably like, or that will probably appeal to his audience. So he talks of how Islam is totally opposite, in opposition to collectivism, because he knows that will sound reasonable, that will sound good, that will make something good light up in Jordan Peterson's head, and also in his audience. And that just shows that you. I mean, I cannot trust the most peaceful, the most reasonable guy out here who is attempting to explain or defend Islam just because of little things like these.
Yeah, and notice, even if that's what he believes, even if he is somehow interpreting the Quran in that way to be anti-collectivism, it seems like you should qualify what you're saying. Say, this is how I interpret it, even though the overwhelming vast majority of Muslims ever, including Muhammad, would completely disagree with me. Right? Yeah. I mean, Islam more than anything else is like defining everything in terms of groups. There's your group and there's our group, and our group has to subjugate your group, and blah, 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 blah. And everything is for the benefit of even the peaceful teachings in Islam. That's what's in the best interest of our group right now. And therefore that's what we'll teach. And later, what's in the best interest of our group changes. And so the rules suddenly change. But I mean, everything is about the good of your group against all other groups.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, it's Islam is more important than the individual. Muhammad is more important than the individual. Allah is more important than the individual. That is how Islam has functioned forever. It is entire books of Islamic law and jurisprudence are very much based on that idea that if something harms the Muslim community, then it is harmful. If something that benefits you doesn't benefit the Muslim community, it doesn't have priority. You have to always prioritize the benefit of the Islamic community, of the Ummah, because that's where your allegiance is, and that's what matters to you, to the true Muslim, more than his own life. I mean, that's the whole idea in Islam, over and over again. And Muhammad himself says that you are supposed to, hold him in higher regards than anything else.
Quick comment from Baylor. Says, Muhammad hijab got you, bro. He smashed you like the Hulk.
You're finished,
Still, you
boy,
got
you're
no
finished.
shame. He keeps spamming this. As far as next week, AP, I don't think we've ever sat down and just gone through hijab's video where he was saying that if you just read the Quran, you would assume that you can have sex with a 5-year-old. And because later in that same video, he starts talking about wife beating. And if you didn't have narrations in the Hadith explaining breaking down some limits on how much you can beat your wife. Of course, you can beat her till her skin turns green in the Hadith. But if you didn't have that, you'd think you could just beat her to death, right? Yeah. But maybe in honor of hijab's fans here, maybe next week we just go through that entire video and listen to a hijab explain the Quran to everyone. That might be a fun clip to go through.
That would be good. I was just trying to quickly find a clip where Muhammad Hijab screams at us, but okay, whatever. I should add more of these meme clips to my portfolio so I can quickly pull it up here and play it when necessary.
All right. What's Hamza got?
Okay, so sorry, I'm going to let you go through that again, but you said something there that's very interesting to me. You said that Islam is antagonistic to a collectivist philosophy. Can you tell me why either why that's true or why you believe it to be true?
Well, first and foremost, the
going to be
Quran.
why you believe it.
I love how he added, or why we believe it to be true.
because I mean, keep in mind, from Peterson's mindset, he's thinking, well, I don't know much about Islam, but I don't know much about Islam, but it seems pretty darn collectivistic.
Yeah, he can't even believe it, which is why he specifically adds why you believe it to be true. It's funny.
Because the Quran, if you look at it, it's a book of individuals going against groups that are insane. I mean, every single story in the Quran is an individual who goes up against a group and the group says, burn him, throw him in the fire, stone him.
I'm sorry. You said he knows philosophy. I don't understand. This is like a very, very idiotic example of why Islam would be opposed to collectivism. What is he talking about? Yeah,
the takeaway. Yeah, you do have that. You do have the story of like Abraham versus the pagans around him and so on. So you do have these stories, but the takeaway is not it's the individual versus the group. Yeah, the takeaway is the believer versus the unbelievers. Right, that's the takeaway.
Yeah. This is a very idiotic example to give, and I'm not sure I understand whether he knows these. I don't want to insinuate that he doesn't understand what collectivism is, but it just seems very strange to me. Anyway.
So, it's pretty clear from the Quran that the group is not necessarily a good thing. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, master yourselves so that you don't become yes people, that when people do good, you do good, and when they do bad, you do bad. But be so that when people do good, you're with them, and when they do bad, you refrain from their evil. So it's very important for, and one of the tragedies, obviously, is that any group goes into groupthink. I mean,
this is so this is so stupid. What his explanation here is basically Islam is opposed to collectivism because Islam teaches that you shouldn't follow the group when they do, evil or whatever they do. You should be righteous and do the right things instead of following the falsehood of wrong groups.
Every single collectivist group says that.
Says
right? Like,
precise same thing.
Our group sets the rules. Our group sets the rules, and anyone else, if someone teaches something else, if another group teaches something else, don't follow that group. Follow what's right according to our group.
That is one of the main propaganda
Yeah,
points.
his group does the exact same thing every other group does, except it does it in a much more extreme way, namely that we'll chop your freaking head off if you do not follow what our group says. So this is like, Islam is like the ultimate thing that does this. The only competition Islam has as far as this collectivist thinking would be like communism or something like that. But
and you brought it up here, but communists, the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, they used this whole idea as one of the main points, which is that the others are, corrupting the world, corrupting societies, and we are supposed to look out for the downtrodden and establish a system in which the groups can no longer justify atrocities and exploit the individual, but where we look out for each other and build a society for each other. They had this whole same idea, but they are not anti-collectivist because of that. On the contrary, they are collectivists specifically because of that. So I don't understand what Hamza Yusuf here is trying to. I don't know if he understands what he's talking about. It's just it's very stupid to me.
It's a really weird situation because again, you don't get the vibe from him that he's trying to deceive people as he's talking. He seems to believe what he's talking about. He seems very intelligent. He seems very well read in philosophy and so on. That's the impression. I mean, keep in mind, everyone, I'm not talking about just what we've seen here. I watched the entire thing, and he's constantly like quoting poets and quoting various thinkers and so on. So he seems well read and very intelligent. And so the question, how in the name of common sense is he saying anything he's saying right now? It makes no sense from an Islamic perspective.
I'm genuinely surprised and wondering what the hell is going on. Like what is, I really don't understand if he's just very ignorant on a specific point, or if he is slipping up because he's trying to win somebody over. I really don't understand right now.
No idea. Weird stuff.
Strange. I respect this guy, so I don't know, man.
This is an area you're much more familiar with than I am, but groupthink is a huge problem, and I think the Quran addresses that problem constantly by showing that you have to stand up against the group, because the group, as Nietzsche pointed,
I will
by standing with our group.
Yeah, I will mention one point. According to the Quran, it says in different verses, the true believers, when they hear Allah's word, they say, "We hear and we obey." So the idea here is they don't question. They don't question. They don't think for a second. They hear the word and they say, "I hear and I obey." That is the ideal Muslim according to the Quran.
I hear and I obey. I hear and I obey. I hear and I obey.
And according to Muhammad and according to the Quran, Muslims are supposed to obey not only Allah, but also Muhammad every single time they make a decision. Every single time they make a decision or issue a command, Muslims are supposed to obey them unconditionally and not contradict them, not oppose them, not do any of these things. The Muslim is supposed to obey them fully. That is a prime example of groupthink right there in the text.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it, but like Surah 4, verse 65 says you're not a Muslim unless you accept all of Muhammad's decisions and you have no doubt, no resistance within yourself against anything he's decided. So you can't even, if you're a real Muslim, according to the Quran, if you're a real Muslim and you say, "Oh, Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl," it won't even cross your mind that there's anything. You'll just instantly accept it. And keep in mind, guys, this is separate from the issue of whether Islam is true or not, right? So this, I mean, something could be true and be a collectivist system or something like that. The point is, he's saying that this isn't, that Islam is against groupthink and collectivism, when it is literally the supreme example in the history of humanity of groupthink and collectivism. It's just all he's saying is that but it condemns other groups. Well, great. Every group does that, right?
I mean, in my mind, the two most collectivist ideas that have been around are communism and Islam, and I'm pretty sure that many other people agree with that, at least to some extent. And then here we have somebody who actually comes out and says Islam is actually against collectivism, and I just don't understand. And I just want to bring up this one issue here, which I'm sure everybody is aware of. Does this sound like an endorsement of individualism versus collectivism? Some Zanatica, which doesn't really mean atheists, it just means people who believe or who are deluded or whatever, were brought to Ali, and he burned them. The news of this event reached Ibn Abbas, who said, "If I had been in his place, I would not have burned them." Nice, right? As Allah's messenger forbade it, saying, "Do not punish anybody with Allah's punishment." Wow, nice, right? I would have killed them, according to the statement of Allah's messenger. Whoever changed his Islamic religion, kill him.
Yeah, so he's saying, I wouldn't burn them, I would behead them. That's what he's saying, because Muhammad clarified that it's you kill an apostate by beheading.
Yeah.
And so notice the dispute is not whether you kill anyone for thinking otherwise or for doing otherwise. It's how you go about it. Do you burn or behead them? Now, to be fair, I'd rather be beheaded than burned alive. But
yeah. I mean, in the end, you die. It doesn't really matter. But here's the idea: they're supposed to be killed when they change their religion. I'm not sure if I showed this to if I just jumped here into the middle of this interview and said, "Hey guys, I want to ask you a question. According to this text, is Islam collectivist or is it against collectivism?" I really wonder what they would say.
Yep. That's good old
Hamza. Out, that insanity or madness is unusual amongst individuals, but it seems to be the norm amongst groups. I mean, I think the
Kierkegaard said that the group was untruth. Said even if an actual truth is claimed by a group, instantly it becomes untruth merely because the group has acclaimed it. Because truth for him was individual in the same sense that you're describing. Do you think that's akin to the Jewish emphasis on the prophetic tradition?
Absolutely, yeah. But I also think that the Islamic tradition does emphasize the importance of community and the importance of sociability. This idea that we are gregarious human beings, that we're people that we need society to fully realize ourselves, and it's the rare individual that can be the anchorite.
We could probably go to another section because we've got his ideas on this. I do want to point out that there is if you're looking for something else, let's see. No, keep going.
I want to say one thing. When I was a Muslim and I read the Quran for the first time, there was just one thing that I liked, that stuck out to me. One thing that I could personally identify with, which I thought is pretty nice. It says on at least one occasion or more occasions, if you follow most people, they will lead you astray, or something like that. And I thought that's totally something that appeals to my personality. And I read that, and that's why I like the Quran. That's why I like what it says. But the issue is, I just read it in isolation and it sounds good. What it actually means is it's referring to the polytheists, the disbelievers around Muhammad at the beginning of his prophethood. And they are rejecting Islam and laughing at him and mocking him. And most people are not believing him. And in response to that, the Quran says that they don't believe, that they are idiots, that they are hellbound, and most people will not believe, and they will lead you astray. But you are right. So it's not really an endorsement of don't follow most people because they will lead you astray. No, it's an endorsement of you Muslims, you Prophet are right, the others are wrong. Don't follow them because they are they are idiots, and we are the only good ones. We are the only right ones. Collectivism.
Yeah, and if we could actually ignore how completely off base he is as far as the idea that Islam is favoring the individual over the group. If we ignore that and just pay attention to what he's saying about the problems of groups, he's actually correct. How a group works, especially if the group is filled with ideas. If you program your group, whatever group you're making, and you say that, you know, part of the ideas of our group is, well, let's just use an example. You have in politics, you have the left and the right. If you program your group, if one of your ideas in your group is like everyone over there is bad, like everyone on that side is a communist, or everyone on that side is a Nazi or something like that. As soon as you program your group with that idea, the tendency of the entire group will be to move further and further away from that.
Yeah.
Because when you join a group, and then you have this need to demonstrate your worth to the group, your value to the group. Otherwise, the group could cast you out, right? But so people want to demonstrate their worth and their value to the group, but you do that by being the most extreme with these ideas. And so people actually start climbing over each other to be the most extreme examples of the ideas of their groups. And that could you'll get moved along by that. And once you've joined the group, there's this overwhelming pressure to adopt all the ideas of the group without question, because the group, by peer pressure, or by violence in the case of Islam, will cast you out if you don't adopt. So in other words, let's say this group is defined by these 18 ideas or something like that. If you start doubting one of those, they'll start, you're not really a member of our group. You're not a true member of our group. But wait a minute, I want to be in the group. That's like part of my identity and part of my self-esteem now. So people will just fall. And that's why you can have all of these. I mean, you can have all of these ideas where you could take one position or the other. But as soon as you've joined a group, there's a tendency to fall in line on every single issue that's important to the group. So he's entirely correct of all that. It's correct about all that. It's just that Islam is the supreme example of that. Islam does that more than any other group that I can think of. Once you've programmed a group and you say, hey, anyone who completely obeys Muhammad in everything, that's a true believer, people will become more and more obsessed with mindlessly agreeing with everything Muhammad says. And that's why, as nice as Sheikh Hamza Yusuf is, his version of Islam will never be dominant. It
never
won't
succeed. This also reminds me of one thing that the Holy Prophet Nietzsche, peace be upon him, said, where he said the surest way to corrupt the youth is to teach them that their own group is more valuable. Not those who agree with them are more valuable than those who disagree with them, or something like that. I also mentioned that recently, and this is one of the brilliant words of Prophet Nietzsche. Peace be upon him. So what other spot do you want to move on now to?
Scroll through those again, because there's one where he talks about the basics of Islam, and there's one where he talks about let's see, no, I don't recall what they said in the atheism section, so I don't think it's, there's Islam in practice, bridging religions. Yeah, go to that. That's interesting. That's coming up more and more. And by the way, notice this ties in perfectly. I mean, this ties in perfectly with the discussion about groups. What Jordan Peterson and Hamza Yusuf have in common, obviously, here is they're more concerned about certain things that are taking place in the West, and with controls on speech and LGBTQ stuff going on and so on. So these are some of the guys that want to form a sort of religious alliance between Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and everyone can unite against all this other stuff. But that's interesting. It's because you're still dealing with groups saying a group being against a different group and forming alliances with other groups to combat one big group. And anyway, interesting stuff if he had just not said anything about collectivism, he'd be better off.
Somebody also told me that Hamza Yusuf justifies child marriage somewhere, which of course shouldn't be a surprise since he's an Islamic scholar, but I wonder what that looks like. But that's maybe for a different time, or maybe for later. I don't know. Let's see.
I've noticed a ton of Muslim scholars, like teaching at universities and so on, who defend child marriage, and even if they say they're not in favor of it today, they basically end up as relativists. Like, notice you can have two different perspectives. You can say, hey, there are things that were always wrong, but people didn't know about them, and so you can be kind of, okay, they didn't know any better, they grew up and that was normal back then. But then you have the actual relativists, like, no, it was never wrong. It was never wrong. It's just viewed as wrong in our society.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of Muslim scholars, and it's because their prophet had sex with a 9-year-old.
How else can you explain that away? The Holy Prophet.
And then studying in Egypt, and then going back to his native land. He died in Spain, but extraordinary individual. So you have people like that. You have people that anybody can find what they're looking for. And that is the power of the faith, I think, is that it is truly a universal faith. And I think one of the things that Western people tend to do, one, they don't recognize that it's a Western faith, because it is. It's part of the Abrahamic faith. It was in Spain for centuries. It's been in Eastern Europe for centuries. And even Istanbul, which is the great capital of Islam for centuries, is half in Europe and half in.
I just think of one very quick thing, which is, can you please tell us how exactly it arrived in Spain and how exactly it arrived in Eastern Europe?
They were invited because it was so friendly.
What kind of logic is that? It's a Western religion because it was in Spain for a long time and in Eastern Europe for a long time. But how was it there?
Hey, United States is an Eastern country because we went and conquered Japan.
Seriously, wow.
We're Eastern.
Wow, man. Islam came to Eastern Europe as a result of Islamist imperialist conquests by the Ottoman Empire. Till
they ran into Vlad.
Yeah. And eventually into Austria and Poland, which gave them the huge defeat in Vienna, and which basically ended the winning and conquering streak of the Ottoman Empire, and then everything went downhill starting there. But that was the ambition. And with that ambition, with endless conquest ruling the world and establishing the flag of the Ottoman Empire all around the world, with that ambition, Islam came to Eastern Europe. That doesn't mean it is a Western religion. And just because people invaded Spain and established Islam as the dominant religion there, which was then brutally driven out after a while, that doesn't mean it's a Western religion.
It's weird because it was so great and wonderful and peaceful. You wonder why anyone didn't want it. Why wouldn't they want it?
No. Why would they drive Islam brutally out and say, we will never, ever have this here again? Although it was, of course, so beautiful. I don't know.
In the East. And that's why it really bridges these two worlds. And so there's so much. I mean, why did
part of the reason why I think it makes sense for religious people, Christians, Jews, and Islamic alike, to focus on their commonalities in the face of the things that are disintegrating our cultures.
There we go.
We could start by trying to make some peace between us if we're going to consort ourselves reasonably as religious individuals.
Well, unite.
Right. And I commend you for trying to do some bridge building, because arguably,
it's come to a common word.
There's
a common
so
word.
Much negativity around this faith and around its adherents.
Why?
That there's an almost instantaneous association with the most negative aspects of humanity.
I have no idea why.
What caused that? Yeah.
Why? Why is this the case? Nobody knows. Nobody can figure this out. It's a great mystery.
Let me think about that. Like, I mean, when people think about Islam, they don't think about me explaining how Islam is for the individual. Instead, they think of like crashing those planes into those buildings and the endless terrorist attacks. Tens of thousands of terrorist attacks since then. But I mean, for some reason, people think of all the blood and guts and carnage and beheadings and killing people for blasphemy instead of me chatting from in front of my fireplace.
But how? Not scientists cannot figure this out. This is the greatest mystery. Greatest mystery. Nobody knows why, and I still don't understand. It's mind blowing. I'm flabbergasted. I always wanted to use that word.
With the religion.
Nailed it.
And it's quite tragic. And so, just as an exercise, a kind of bracketing for a second, and try to think.
Whattening. What? Bracket? What did you say?
I don't know.
Think about things, guys. A kind of bracketing for a second.
Did you say bracketing?
He's saying bracketing, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And try to think about things. A mentor of mine and a friend of mine, Dr. Thomas Cleary, wrote a book called Zen Koans. He also translated the Quran. He's one of the brilliant translators of our lifetime.
Yeah, they matter of fact, the first class I ever took on Islam, that's the Quran we use, Thomas the Cleary translation of the Quran. And even then it was excerpts from the Quran, right? There was none of the bad stuff in it. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I still have that around here somewhere.
I'm still surprised why people associate Islam with bad things.
It's so weird.
Nobody knows.
But he wrote a book called Zen Koans. And in the introduction of that book, he actually says that the purpose of a koan is to snap people out of sloppy thinking.
I read that book. Yeah.
But he says in there, but you don't need a koan to do that. Just ask an educated Western person what they think about Islam, and they'll start expressing all of these prejudices. And if you ask them, have you ever read the Quran? No. Do you know anything about the Prophet Muhammad? No.
You know what I want to do? All I want to do right now is to sit in front of Hamza Yusuf and say, can you give me an example of all these prejudices that Western people associate with Islam? And then I want to hear the list from him. And then I want to ask him, why do you think they think this specific thing? Why do you think they think this specific thing?
Yeah.
What do you think is the root cause of that? Let us go through the chain of thoughts and events that lead to this specific prejudice.
Yeah. Why do you think many people associate Islam with beating women for not wearing the hijab? Why do you think that Islam has something to do with all of these terrorist attacks that keep happening every single day around the world? Why do you think that people think that something about Islam has something to do with mobs forming and beating people to death over, criticizing Muhammad or something? Why do you think that? And I'm with you. I think that these things are actually going to be traced back to pretty straightforward observations of the Muslim world, rather than people just, hey, you know what? It's like he really thinks that, like, over here in the West, we're like, hey, you know what we should do? We should make up something about Islam being obsessed with controlling what women wear. We should make that up. And then, you know what we should do? We should get the media to CGI a bunch of violent mob riots and so on like that to make people think this. It's just wow, interesting stuff, man.
Yeah. Sereni said, I can see AP like a psychologist asking those questions to him on the couch. That's what I was just imagining. Yeah, I would be sitting there and be like, can you tell me, Mr. Hamza Yusuf?
This is your Freud. This is your Freud voice.
Oh yeah. In the case of beating women and making them wear veils, where do you think this specific prejudice comes from? Can you explain this? And then I want to go with him through that hole. prejudice and chain and figure this out and see where it goes. You know what I mean, David Wood?
Yeah, and it is because again, this guy comes across as sincere and intelligent and so on, but like when you talk about how people view Islam and you're acting like there's something wrong with the people who are viewing Islam in this way and not with all the people who are doing this stuff to make people think that that's, and, of course, the Muslim sources, which show why these people are rioting over, Muhammad cartoons or something like that. I don't know, it's weird to be blaming people who come to their conclusions based on what they see around the world.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Many Muslims think, and I heard this pretty much before I started to stop being stupid. They think all of these negative opinions and all of the hate about Islam is because people secretly know that Islam is the truth.
It's the truth,
and they want to deny it, or they know that Islam is strong, which is why they try to kind of smear and slander it or something like that, which is like two very idiotic ideas that are surprisingly popular in the Muslim world. And they're just very, 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 it's just very stupid. Very stupid. I don't know what to say.
Yep.
Can't think of another adjective right now. Stupid.
Looks like we got to the section of a summary of Islam's core beliefs. And if we get through the...
I would say he will probably explain Islam in a very, very accurate way. Let's go. Do you want to listen to this? Or what?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It is something they read in a newspaper article or in Time or Newsweek or the Atlantic Monthly.
Yeah, well, it's not an easy thing to try to get a toehold in a different tradition, especially
it's
when
not
you
that
don't even
hard.
have a toehold in your own.
Yeah, it's not that hard, especially for an educated person. You're obviously a highly educated person. It's not that hard. Islam, one of the things Gibbon said is that Islam spread because it was a very easy religion to understand.
I remember hearing this part. I made a quick response to this part. But I feel like this is just this simple sentence, this quote here is just ridiculous.
You're obviously a highly educated person. It's not that hard. Islam, one of the things Gibbon said is that Islam spread because it was a very easy religion to understand. So
it's a religion that pretends to be easy to understand, right? Islam is just submission to God, right? Even going with what we just talked about, Surah 4, verse 65 says that you can't have any resistance against any of Muhammad's decisions. Where are Muhammad's decisions? They're not in the Quran. They're in these massive multi-volume collections of stories called Hadiths. So how do you know what you're supposed to do in all these situations? Well, someone has to go through all those. The vast majority of Muslims are not actually going to go through all those sources. The vast majority of Muslims don't have those sources. So what happens is Muslims just believe whatever their sheikh or imam tells them about Islam. But these guys are interpreting Islam very, very differently. You have massive divisions within Islam. Not just talking about like Sunni, Shia split and so on. I'm talking about like in mainstream Islam, you'll have some who believe that Allah has literal body parts and others who think that's absolute nonsense. And who's right? Well, you find all of this stuff in the sources, even given what he's said in this discussion, when he says, Islam is against collectivist ideologies and so on, or anything else he's saying, he's at odds with the majority of Muslims. So if Islam is so easy to understand, why does almost no one agree with pretty much anything he's saying in this interview, right? It's so easy. Think about it. If it's so easy to understand and he's got the right view, well, guess what? The vast majority of the world's Muslims haven't agreed with Hamza Yusuf, and therefore seems like it might be really, really difficult to understand because only 20th and 21st century Western converts to Islam have figured out what Allah really means in these passages.
And that is only one aspect of why what he's saying is wrong. The other aspect is, of course, this is not why Islam spread. right? So
Correct.
Islam spread mostly, so historically speaking, Islam spread mostly from the beginning to the very end due to conquest, due to violent spreading, conquering adjacent regions and spreading Islam by diplomacy or by force. And the Muslim forces over the first centuries, according to many scholars like Robert Hoyland, he made a brilliant timeline of that in his book, which I actually have here, which is The Arab Conquest, the Creation of an Islamic Empire. Here he points out here that the Muslims, in spreading Islam, they didn't even prioritize spreading Islam itself. What they prioritized is conquering and then spreading Islam. They conquer, they brutally invade, they take over, they subjugate the people they encounter, and then they come to establishing Islam as the dominant religion and spreading Islam to people. And in fact, in many cases, in most cases in the first centuries, the Muslim conquerors and leaders didn't even want most of the population to convert to Islam, because converting the population mostly to Islam would have deprived them of
no jizya,
of jizya payments and of taking belongings and taking wealths, which is why they did not encourage going around and quickly converting everyone to Islam. Their priority was to conquer, to enrich the Islamic Empire, and the conversion would come with time. And this only changed after generations. Only after generations they decided, hey, we should be converting everybody to Islam.
Yeah,
and by then Islam already spread a lot by force.
It's I mean, this is kind of hilarious, right? It's like, okay, so Islam starts out in Arabia, okay, and then somehow we'll leave it as a mystery at this point. Somehow Islam advances both east and west. So it advances west across northern Africa up into Europe and Spain. It advances northward into Europe, in Eastern Europe. Islam also marches out of Arabia eastward, going through the Persians and all the way out to Afghanistan and Pakistan and so on, and into India and China even. And so you ask Hamza, Yusuf, how did all this happen? Well, because Islam is so easy to understand.
Yeah, it just appeals to everybody.
Okay, well, Islam is still easy to understand. So why did the advancement stop? Oh, it's because all these people somehow got the idea that Islam calls for their violent subjugation, all these horrible things, and somehow they invented that idea out of nowhere, and then they started pushing the peaceful, Muslim empire back out of their areas. This is like delusion level.
It reminds me of a very funny moment in Jordan Peterson's interview with Mohammed Hijab, where Mohammed Hijab says that this actually,
I didn't see it. You told me about this. Yeah,
he says this is actually a reason why Islam is true. This is actually one of the miracles of Islam, that the Muslims were so powerful that it spread so fast. And then Jordan Peterson asks, so why did it stop? And then he's like, well, because.
Why did it stop in Europe? That's what you.
Because
that's what you
yeah. Why did it stop in Europe? And he's like, well, because they just couldn't do it there, because it just didn't continue. And it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, this is wild, wild stuff here.
I'm not making this up for those who think so. But
yeah, notice if you actually took that seriously, Islam was able to go out and conquer specific areas, and this is proof that it's of its divine origin. I mean, if you actually followed that method, I mean, my goodness, look at how quickly communism spread in the 20th century. Even now, like you've got Hakikachu, you've got Daniel Hakikachu, and he's constantly complaining about Western liberalism and how it's oppressing the entire world and stuff. Well, I mean, following Hijab's reasoning, you have to say it's true, because it's spreading so rapidly and so forcefully that it must be that this is somehow evidence that it's the truth. Wild
Here,
stuff, man.
let me bring this up. So here's obviously Muhammad Hijab obviously agrees that Islam spread through war, and here he completely disagrees with Hamza Yusuf on why it spread. Surprise, surprise. And here's just this funny instance of
That's you.
This is me. I know it's not. It's me. It looks. It might be me. I don't know. I'm not sure. But here, this is a funny part. Have done that otherwise.
I see that the expansion of the Islamic empire is a proof for Islam. I believe it's miraculous, if anything, that this happened.
Then why did it stop at? Why did it stop at Europe's borders, so to speak? If it was a miraculous expansion,
yeah, it stopped out because of it wasn't successful there. It wasn't. It stopped where it couldn't go further.
Allah's only God in Arabia. Okay, so he couldn't get that far. He's not God in he's not God in Europe. What are you talking about? Come on, Peterson.
Oh boy, this is so stupid.
So this idea that I can't understand it,
where's the video?
I'm having a
Oh yeah, I put the screen away, right?
hard time. It's not that hard to understand. I mean, Islam is actually very straightforward.
okay, then
Yeah, just submit to everything Muhammad says.
5-minute summary of the core beliefs.
Oh, here we go.
I don't want to put you on the spot. It's not a question.
No, that's not hard at all.
So lay it out. That would be very helpful.
So we have a famous hadith in which we're told that the angel Gabriel came in the form of a man and asked the prophet, "Tell me about faith." And the Prophet Muhammad said, "Faith is to believe that there's only one God, and that Muhammad, which includes all the previous messengers, is a messenger of God, to believe in angels, to believe in the books that God has revealed, to believe in the last day, the day of judgment, and to believe in the measuring out of good and evil, that good and evil is part of life." And then he said, "Tell me about Islam." And he said, "Islam is that you make the testimony of faith, that you pray 5 times a day, that you fast Ramadan, that you pay zakat, the 2.5% of your standing wealth at the end, not your income tax, but your standing wealth at the end of a year, that's a whole year, 1/40th is given to poor people. There's 8 categories that are given in the Quran. And that you, if you're able to, you make a pilgrimage once in your lifetime to Mecca." And then he said, "Tell me about ihsan, which is the 3rd dimension of Islam." And he said, and this is the dimension of virtuous being, like being a person of arity, of excellence in the world. And he said, ihsan is to worship God as if you see God. And if you don't see him, at least you know that he sees you. So you have an awareness of that there is a divine presence, and you should be in a state of awareness in your behavior. I mean, one of the things about, if you're
I'm converting to Islam tonight.
Driving and everybody's speeding, and then somebody sees a cop, they all suddenly slow down. I have a friend once who just zoomed past the cop when everybody slowed down, and he pulled him over. And he said, "Why didn't you slow down?" He said, "I felt like a hypocrite." So the guy, he let him go.
That's actually a very nice response. But is he finishing now? Or
but that's people when they're in the presence of authority, they tend to behave well. Unless
okay, so Islam is easy to understand. It's very straightforward. Believe in God, in one God. Believe in the messenger. Believe in the books. Believe in good and evil. Also the angels and all that stuff, and life and death. Then pray, fast, pilgrimage, zakat, and express that you believe in these things. So this is Islam. It's very easy, right? What else is there? There's nothing else, right? This is easy to understand.
Yeah, it's he seems to be confusing, basic Islamic practices versus the religion as a whole. The religion as a whole is massively confusing, to the point where Muslims around the world can't agree on certain basic ideas, again, like whether Allah has literal body parts or not. They can't agree on that. But yeah, he's right as far as, hey, when you become a Muslim, we give you a pretty simple list of these are 5 things you have to do, and these are 6 things you have to believe. So we're going to give you a list of 5 things you have to do and 6 things you have to believe. But I mean, the second you start looking into any of those things more closely, you run into all kinds of problems. I mean, if you're talking about the 5 pillars of Islam, you immediately start recognizing the pagan origins and so on. And so you have to think, why were the pagans doing some of these things? And then even if you're talking about beliefs, I mean, you have to believe in the books. What's that mean? Well, according to the Quran, you have to believe in the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the books and say that they are still authoritative for the groups that they were revealed to. But pretty much every Muslim in the world rejects that. I'm actually not sure that he does, because in the study Quran, which he's one of the authors of he's one of the people who put the study Quran together. I'm not sure how much he contributed, but he mentions that in this interview that he was involved with the study Quran. The study Quran is actually much more than your average Muslim acknowledges that the Quran is affirming the earlier scriptures, much more so than Muslims are aware of. And so he might have a different view, but notice just something like believe in the previous books. That's a requirement. So that, notice for him, it's, see what a simple requirement. No, it's not, because if you actually believe in the previous books, as the Quran tells you to do, you run into all kinds of contradictions. We've already discussed a big one. The Quran says that you have to be violently subjugated if you call Jesus the Son of God. The gospel, which the Quran affirms as the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, declares over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, like a beating drum, that Jesus is the divine Son of God. And so,
here's the problem, David. Let's just imagine it as a scenario, right? I come as somebody who doesn't understand Islam, and I say, "Hey, explain Islam to me. I don't know. I don't know about this. Can you please just tell me what Islam is?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, Islam is very, very easy to understand.
Yeah,
it's believe in one God." Oh, okay. So I just have to believe in one God,
that's called monotheism, not Islam.
Yeah,
right?
like the Christian God. No, not like that, because their perception of the one God is wrong. It's unacceptable. You would go to hell for that. Oh, yeah. So in one God according to your beliefs. Yes.
Yeah.
So the messengers, it's okay if I just believe, or you also have to accept Muhammad definitely and obey him fully. Oh, so what about the books? So I could just believe in all the books and follow them. Yeah, but those other books are outdated. You're supposed to follow the Quran only and not really trust the other books as you read them, because this is Islam, right? Islam means you follow the Islamic book, the Quran. So there is that detail, and of course we also have to add to that the fact that according to our current beliefs, those books were tampered with, corrupted, or whatever it is. And you also have to accept our ideas of good and evil, and in our ideas we can violently subjugate the world and all the religions, and women will be reduced to second-class citizens. If you want to leave Islam, you will be executed. And but there are also specific details around that as well. And that's and if you want to go into all the details, we can sit here for 2 months and argue about the differences of Islam. In the end, we might end up fighting and killing each other, as it happens right now.
Yeah, so it's kind of a big package deal, and you kind of, I mean, you covered it as you went on your rant there, but Islam isn't simply belief in one God.
Yeah,
it's not just a message saying that you must submit to Allah, right? Christians and Jews will say, of course, we're going to submit to God. It's a message about how you submit to God, and you submit to God by mindlessly agreeing with everything Muhammad said and did, unless he changed his mind at some point later. And that gets massively confusing because it ends up being incoherent. You can't make sense of this stuff. Even take an issue like believing in the Quran and following the Quran. If you go with the Quran, according to the Quran itself, the Quran was revealed because the Arabs needed a revelation in their own language. Other groups already had their revelations. The Arabs were the last. This is why Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. It's not simply, that he's just the last prophet for no reason. He's the last prophet because every other group already got their revelation, and the people who were last on Allah's list of the people who needed to be reached with a revelation were the Arabs. And
what about the Americans?
Yeah, well, it's just a little confusing. But I mean, if you're a Muslim, you have to believe that they had their revelation too, and just everyone lost it somehow, apparently, even though that's not the perspective you get from the Quran. The perspective you get from the Quran is Allah sent prophets and revealed scriptures to all these different groups. The Arabs last, because if he didn't give them a revelation in their own language, then they would have a fair objection on the day of judgment that we didn't have a revelation in our own language. So Allah says, okay, I'm going to give them the Quran in Arabic, specifically so that they have a revelation in their own language. Notice, Muslims today think everyone, even non-Arab speakers, has to go to the Quran. Wait a minute. The purpose of the Quran was so that people would have a revelation in their own language. So that defeats the entire purpose of the Quran if you're now saying that all people of all languages need to go to this one book in this language that they don't understand. It completely contradicts itself. So the point is that, anyway, the long story short here is, it's so easy. No. As soon as you start digging a little beyond the surface level of just these basic beliefs and basic practices, it's the moment you start looking into what these beliefs are, you find out they're completely incoherent. It makes no sense.
Yeah. We have here another verse brought up that one of the prophets we have is Ibn Joseph Smith. The Joseph Smith was also a prophet of Allah who was sent to the Americans. This happened only as an exception because Allah forgot that Americans would come later. So he afterwards, as an exception to a prophet after the final prophet, sent Joseph Smith to the Americans to also finally give them their true revelations. And we also have a different example. For example, like in the Scandinavian cultures and religions, we have the Norse religions, the Norse mythologies, where you have Odin, where you have people going to Valhalla. You can actually see the Islamic influence in that, where Odin is this guy who tells people to seek wisdom and to fight and go to Valhalla, which is generally similar to Allah. Allahu Akbar, and yeah, so it's Valhalla actually comes from Wallah, Wallahi, and or from something related to Allah, and there is a clear sign that Allah also sent prophets to the Scandinavians, for example.
It's the proof.
Yeah, this is the truth. You see? I'm scared when I say these things that somebody will actually be like, "Hey, wait a minute, that makes sense."
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to go through?
There's only one more part I think is really interesting, but we're going to cover that on my show tomorrow, and that's where he talks about having a near-death experience, which I looked into those. This is probably like 15 years ago or something like that, but it's an interesting topic. So he got into a car crash. Was not supposed to survive, but actually survived. But he talks about his near-death, like out-of-body near-death experience and stuff like that. So that's an interesting topic. So, we will check that out on my channel tomorrow.
Well, now hold up. There's one thing I want to quickly, what drew Hamza to us now, but there's one thing that I actually want to quickly check out here, where he says Arabic word for disbelievers, where this is argued. Now, I didn't listen to this whole thing, so I'm wondering if there's anything of substance that is being said here that we can quickly address.
And then they just live and practice that, and very often they have very solid lives in that environment. But then he talks about, and he calls those healthy people. Then he talks about the sick people who actually have to grapple with these different phases. He looks at melancholy, religious melancholy, this idea of being in a melancholic state about the alienation of the world, about the trials of the world, the uncanniness of the world, the strangeness of it. And then I think the second, he looks at the just the problem of evil, grappling with this problem of evil. And then the third one is this sense of wrongdoing, right? That a lot of people feel.
Yeah, that's a terrible one right now. I mean, I think part of the reason why our culture is riven apart by political trouble at the moment is because issues that should be discussed at the level of the sacred have started to be discussed at the level of the political. And so there's a pervasive accusation against, let's say, Western culture in particular, coming from the more radical side of the left, claiming that our culture, or the Western culture, is a tyrannical patriarchy and an oppressive colonial enterprise. And of course, all cultures are contaminated with catastrophe and atrocity as well. And we actually need to know what to do about that. You know, the Christian doctrine of original sin is some help in that, because it makes the fact of the legacy of human evil, let's say, something personal, but also transpersonal at the same time, right? It's part of the human condition. And it looks to me like without that container, the guilt we have about the arbitrariness of life and the arbitrariness of our privileges can start to become overwhelming. And then it can also become weaponized, which has certainly happened at the present time, and to a dangerous degree. So you can go after people for their privilege, let's say, and they do feel guilty because advantages and disadvantages are sort of parsed out to some degree arbitrarily. And then, you know, they collapse in the face of that onslaught and apologize and retreat. And it just doesn't look to me like that's a good thing at all.
Well, it's not a good thing if you don't have a religious worldview that...
I don't understand. This tag here says Arabic word for disbeliever. What is
it? I remember him. I think he just says it at some point.
Gives meaning to those situations. For instance, I mean, one of the most important aspects of the Quran, I think, is that it really gives answers to these inequities in the world, but what some have termed the mystery of iniquity. And the Quran, one of the hallmarks of a believer is gratefulness, gratitude. In fact, the word in Arabic for
they're ungrateful,
an ingrate. And so gratitude for blessings, and then patience for trials and tribulations. And so...
Okay, nothing really great to address here, although...
Yeah, that wasn't really worthy of a section, him just saying.
Yeah, I don't know why they made a timestamp of this here. Yeah. But yeah, even there is a disagreement on what exactly the proper word would be for the Islamic... I mean, the Quran uses kafir, or those who do kufr, those who disbelieve, frequently, which... the most common explanation is those who deny or reject or hide. And yeah, whatever. Nothing important here.
You're just saying that because you're an ungrateful atheist.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I suck. That's
why you have to be humiliated.
Humiliated and destroyed, you boy. I saw one part where Jordan Peterson was making a very terrible joke here in this in this interview. I only saw that part and I kind of laughed, where he makes a terrible joke and Hamza Yusuf just doesn't even respond to it. He just kind of like goes. I found that so hilarious when I saw that like a year ago or so. I don't know, when did this come out? 9 months ago, whatever. But let us go through the super chats now. We have an abundance of super chats, so many I can't even possibly go through all of them. I see like, I don't know, dozens, hundreds of super chats here that people have made. Wow, man, amazing. But let me quickly... Wait, it's actually only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's actually only 7 super chats. Sorry. But let me read them very quickly here. SV said, AP, I am a closeted ex-Muslim, but don't come forward yet because you know how difficult it is. But it feels great to have a sense of understanding here. I appreciate it, and it's great that you find some.
Yeah. There are lots of those. The closeted ex-Muslims, and some of them are even in the West where they're comparatively safe, but they don't want to they don't want to go through the drama with their family. But some of them are in places where you're actually legitimately in danger, being an ex-Muslim.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of people endure the same problem. Lots of people go through the same problems, have to live with it. Some have such difficulties living with it that I don't know, they just escape from that place or go to drastic. It's a tough thing dealing with the Islamic culture, Islamic beliefs, Islamic families, especially if your families are very, very religious. If you live in a very religious country or environment, it can get really, really rough. So
yeah, and the Muslim speakers who are the guys who are talking about the avalanche of apostasy. I mean, this was several years ago, so it's probably more now. But you remember it was 24% of young Muslims had left Islam, and so that's so SV there. You've got a lot of company.
More and more people are emerging. More and more people are turning away from Islam. More and more people disagree that Islam is the truth, and it will only increase. And we want to make sure that this happens quicker, sooner than later. But thank you, SV, and stay strong. ES1002 said, "Who gets to decide what real Islam is?" I do.
This show.
Yeah, that's the issue. But Islam is easy to understand, as Hamza Yusuf just explained to us. So therefore, it doesn't need to be decided by anybody. He just gives you a list of things that Muhammad said, and that's what Islam is. And that's why Islam has been at a massive civil war over the last 4,000 years. And right now is actually maybe the calmest time in terms of war and peace inside Islam.
And that's because it got physically stopped from advancing. Islam, whenever Islam could advance and conquer, it did. It was only when people actually stopped it. That's when it's stopped advancing.
That's when it stopped advancing, and that's when they stopped fighting over who gets to be in charge of advancing and spreading the true version of Islam. But yeah, Islam is easy to understand and simple. Mohammed Epstein. Why? Mohammed Epstein, peace be upon him, said
on the Aisha Express, flying on the Aisha Express. Barack, the Aisha Express
said, "Guys, I made it all up as a prank."
Yeah,
fantastic.
Finally got it.
Fantastic. Yeah, you know what's very funny when people pronounce these mostly Jewish last names and say, for example, Epstein or I don't know, Einstein. It just makes me feel like no, that's not how it. That's not what it is. It's Epstein. It's Einstein. It's not Steen. Don't.
Did you ever see
that.
Did you ever see what was that? Was it Young Frankenstein?
No.
He'd flip out Frankenstein.
Oh.
You're getting mad. Frankenstein. I think I haven't seen that. I saw that when I was like 5 or something like that. But I just remember that.
It feels like torture to me when people pronounce these things like that. But it's what can you do? Squid said David would imitating any Muslim. Muhammad hijab voice. This this became a thing. It just started out with him mocking Muhammad hijab is very strong. It's true, you see. And now it's like it's the basic Dawa boy saying anything. It's basically just that.
You know what's tremendously funny is like me imitating people that started out when I was a little kid. I'm talking like 2nd and 3rd grade. I would get people's phone numbers. This is before like your phone told you where someone's calling from. This is like old rotary dial-up phones and stuff like that. This was even before *69. But I would get someone's phone number from like school, like a girl, and I would call her up, but pretend to be some other kid from class. And I sit there talking to her or him or whoever, but I'd be talking for hours, pretending to be someone else. Not to try and get anything. I was just like trying to cause chaos, right? Like people showing up to school and, hey, when I talk, what? I didn't talk to you. I don't know why. I thought it was hilarious, but yeah.
The background, yeah. Yeah, that's why you're doing what you're doing right now, right? The whole Islam stuff here. You're just trying to create chaos in the world.
What's it all for, David? In a word, chaos.
Squid said, David would. Oh yeah,
You already read
that. Ali Dogwa said, "I will smash you in a debate."
What's up with all these names, man? All these.
I don't know. People are having real fun here.
Mohammed Epstein. Peace be upon him.
John Mason said he might be an ultra-crepidarian. David, would you see?
Ultra-crepidarian.
Said, I love you, AP. You make me laugh. Your intelligence is refreshing. Keep telling the truth. This wasn't the super chat. I just marked this because it sounds
because you're a narcissist.
ES1002 said, I wish all world leaders learn about chapter 65, verse 4.
Hey, I just mentioned that we could go through that hijab video next. I mean, we don't have to, but that is a very, because like on Twitter and stuff, I put together some of the clips from it, and then I shared it on Twitter of him saying that, you get the impression that it's just you get the impression that you could have sex with a 5-year-old if you just read the Quran. Mm-hmm. But the larger discussion was him talking to Quran only Muslims. But it's an interesting discussion, him talking about what you're left with if you are a Quran only Muslim and you don't have the Hadith to moderate what you would conclude if you just read the Quran. It's pretty interesting stuff.
This comment says Muhammad Epstein didn't squeeze himself because the angel Jibreel squeezed Muhammad and told him to read. And he was like, I can't read. And he squeezed him painfully and said, read. Anyway, but that is combined with this very nice phrase here. Muhammad Epstein didn't squeeze himself. Yeah. Squid said AP sounds like Turkish Hitler when he says Stein.
Because don't let anyone start calling you Turkish Hitler. That would stick.
It would be funny. I'll find it funny. I find it funny. Yeah. So there was one more super chat that I see. Oh no, that I already read that. Yeah. Okay. And with that said, we are tomorrow live on your channel where we also want to talk about. What? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because I just noticed I'd seen that it said prophet under apostate prophet, and I was like, what is that? How are there two lines to it? And then I remembered it was right when I clicked on it, was giving me the option to have a little sub like title or something like that. So apostate prophet.
Yeah, I just saw that and I thought, oh, this is something that they just added.
Yeah, that's new.
So I wanted to use that and have my title here, my job title. My job title is prophet.
Mine will be the Dizzle.
Yeah. All right, mate. Grace 174 said, do each of you think that Muhammad literally experienced what he believed was a revelation of Gabriel? Wait, do each of you think that Muhammad literally experienced what he believed was literally experienced as in?
Yeah, so I think that's saying, do we think he knew he was scamming people, or do we think he actually believed that he was getting revelations from Gabriel?
The issue is the question here can also mean that he actually literally, okay, I guess it says experienced, which would be his personal perspective.
Yeah. So did he actually have experiences that he believed were revelations? I do believe that he actually believed that he was receiving revelations, but I think you can make an argument. You can definitely make an argument that he knew he was duping people based on the revelations he's getting. Like every time he wants something, he gets this special revelation. Even Aisha herself noticed this. She said, wow, your Lord hastens to satisfy your wishes and desires. Like, hey, every time you want some sick, perverted thing, the angel Gabriel rushes in to give you a Quran revelation saying, yeah, Muhammad gets whatever he wants. So people were picking up on this. So I think you could argue it, but I lean towards him being actually insane or demon possessed or something like that, some combination of of factors.
Yeah,
Seizures, whatever it may be. I think it's a combination of factors, but yeah.
I pretty much agree. I think it is very hard for us to actually to know what really happened. So it is we can't really say what happened. But as far as I see it, looking at the evidences, the reports about Muhammad, what I would say is I think it's very likely that he actually thought that he was receiving a message from an entity, and that over time, maybe through influences, through explanations by others, according to Islamic traditions, by the cousin of his dead wife, he came to believe that he was chosen as a prophet, and that this thing that is coming to him and communicating with him is actually an angel of Allah who has chosen him as the final messenger, or who sent him as the final messenger. So I believe that he was probably experiencing severe mental health issues, severe hallucinations. He had problems. But we can see many hadith which say that he would fall on the ground, that he would pass out, be in a state of trance, make loud snorting noises and sweat, and be totally red in the face while receiving his revelations. It sounds like he had a mental health problem, but as David said, I also believe that he probably took advantage of that state and started adding stuff, revelations according to his own needs. And here's the thing. Now, here's the thing that you could discuss and argue about. I could believe that he had some malintent, and that he started adding his own revelations based on his own desires and wishes. But maybe, even in that case, maybe he didn't deliberately add those things with a bad intention in order to deceive people and say, they believe in what I say anyway, so let me just add this and that. Maybe he deceived himself so much in his deluded, unstable mental state that he began perceiving his own desires as revelations, and then delivered those things to the people around him. I'm giving him a lot of credit here as a person who is just a victim and not somebody who deceives people. But I mean, anything is possible.
Yeah, notice that. We're being as generous as we can possibly be, right? Because it's actually someone who thinks he's getting revelations and is actually psychologically messed up. You don't condemn him in the same way you condemn someone who's just being evil. So for everyone who flips out, they're saying Muhammad has mental problems, the alternative is he's just evil, right? That's it. Like, simply evil. Everything is a scam with him. Yep.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to believe that anyone who has such severe mental health problems is actually intentionally being evil. It's
that would be the issue. Like, if this was just a scam, I would expect him, if it's just some scam, I would expect it to not include the stuff about, him falling on the ground and face turning red and stuff like you could, if you're trying to scam people into thinking you're getting revelations, there are better ways to do it than that. You don't have to look like you're demon possessed.
I mean, we have reports where he sees a dark cloud approach in Arabia, which happens rare in his time, and he loses it. He panics, and he doesn't talk to anybody. He runs around. He walks around quietly, praying for a long time. He's genuinely scared, according to those reports. And then he comes out and says that he saw the cloud and he was praying forever and wishing that Allah doesn't send a great punishment to the people with this cloud, or maybe the end of everything, that Allah doesn't destroy and annihilate humanity and them together now. So I feel like he was really in a, together with very superstitious beliefs in his time and environment, I think he had problems.
He had some problems.
He had problems.
Yep.
And Ultra Crepidarian. My favorite song is Little Girls by Oingo Boingo. What is that? Is that an actual thing? I don't know. I don't know.
There's a band called Oingo Boingo. I don't know about little girls.
Little girls. Okay. Yeah.
It's Muhammad Epstein's favorite song.
Riyad Chaudhry said, "What is your live stream countdown song called?" It doesn't have a name. I created it. I found an Islamic humming melody somewhere, and I thought, hey, wait a minute. And right at that time, I was experimenting with making beats and music and stuff, and I thought, hey, I would like to experiment with this. So I added a beat to it and changed the length of the hummings a little bit and created that intro music.
That's pretty creative.
Yeah, I have to admit, yes, it is.
Hey, do you see a link there? I added a link, but I don't know if it showed up.
Where?
I just try to share a link to tomorrow's live stream.
Did you send it to me in that private chat?
I sent it in the chat. I just don't know what the settings are on the. I don't know if what the settings are in the chat, if it actually shows up when I send something.
I don't see anything here from you. It probably blocked you because it's like somebody's trying to.
That's messed up.
Through a URL into
pretty horrible
scams. Yeah. Phishing. What do each of you think of pre-sup apologetics? I don't think anything. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I'm semi pre-sup.
Yeah.
I'm not full pre-sup.
Yeah.
I'm semi pre-sup, so I buy some of the pre-sup stuff, but not the full presuppositional apologetics. Approach.
Yeah. I don't think anything. I don't think. SGT said, "Hey guys, love your content. I find the similarities between Muhammad and Joseph Smith very interesting." I actually made a stream about this with an ex-Mormon woman who, it's funny, I forgot her name, but I invited her on my channel. she's
it's like women aren't even persons to the apostate prophet here.
I probably had more women on here as guests than men. So, but no, I had a conversation with an ex-Mormon woman activist, and our stream together was like, that was the main point of it, that Joseph Smith and Muhammad had a lot of stuff in common. And she said to me that she also heard the same thing from others, including from Mormons, but that Mormons themselves are actually very much offended by being compared to Islam. Because they absolutely,
why? It's so simple.
They detest Islam. They have these very bad opinions about Islam, which is very sad because they are so similar to each other in different ways. At least the fundamentals of their religions. Like Mormonism today is very different from how Mormonism was in the past.
It is going to be interesting stuff, because I've told people before. I was walking through Harlem one day, maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago or something like that, and there was a group of Mormons. They were all like 17, 18 years old, but standing in the middle of a group of people having a conversation right there on the corner of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Boulevard, and they were. I stopped and talked to them, and they broke it down that they're going to be missionaries to the Middle East to convert Muslims, and they're basically getting practice in more aggressive environments to prepare themselves. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'd watch a Netflix series on that. Mormon missionaries going to the Middle East to convert. I would watch that. That would be some interesting stuff there.
That would sound really, really interesting.
They should make a reality show out of that one.
Yeah. So I had a live stream here. It is titled the other YouTuber is called Exmo Lex, and where Exmo stands for ex-Mormon. But you can actually watch that here, Mormonism and Islam, where I talked to her and we compared Mormonism to Islam and Joseph Smith to Muhammad, and it was actually very, very interesting to go through all the similarities there.
Yeah, she got an AC/DC shirt on, so that's good.
Yeah. That's why I invited her.
Back in black.
I actually only know one AC/DC song.
What the heck's wrong with you?
I don't know. That's Highway to Hell, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. You figured you'd go with that one, freaking atheist.
That's the only song I know. I don't even know what else they do.
They have significantly better songs than that. Just so you know.
Well, that's the only thing I heard.
In fact, if you ever want to get hyped up for something, listen to Thunderstruck. My goodness, you'd be ready to take on the entire Ummah in a debate.
If you want to go through those old things, I've always loved listening to Iron Maiden. I think their songs are just amazing. Yeah.
It's garbage. Is it accurate to call Islam a Christian heresy? You certainly can. You certainly can. You can view Islam as one giant Christian heresy. So, because it literally contains a bunch of heretical Christian stuff. But just so everyone knows, a heretical group it's one group, but then it breaks off and drops a bunch of the core beliefs and so on. So that would generally be the designation of a heresy, is you drop some of the core beliefs. So notice, with Islam, you've got, they believe in God, they believe in the prophets, they believe in the same books, the same revelations. They believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. They believe that Jesus performs all these miracles. They believe that he's the Messiah. They have all these beliefs, and yet they drop the core teachings of the gospel. And so you could say that that's a heretical, that's a heresy of Christianity. So yes, you could say that.
Damage just mentioned here "Run to the Hills," which is a song by Iron Maiden, which is immediately stuck in my head now the whole time. But I love it; it's amazing. I wanted to add something. What were you just talking about? I didn't listen to you because I was preoccupied. I was occupied with Iron Maiden.
Whether Islam's a Christian.
Oh yeah. There is actually it is actually one of the earliest mentions of Islam from an outsider. And I keep forgetting that guy's name again and again. Do you know one of the first people outside Islam, Christians, who mention Islam? He was
John of Damascus.
Yes, in his book on heresies. I think he has a chapter dedicated to Islam, and there he refers to it as a heresy of Christianity. He doesn't even refer to it as a separate religion. It's like,
maybe next week on my channel, because I just posted a video of Sheikh Imran Hussein claiming that Jesus was crucified. Although if you say he claimed that Jesus was crucified, he will deny it, because he uses crucifixion in a very technical sense to mean that you have to actually die or you haven't been crucified, which to crucify someone means to nail them to a cross, even if they were to never die. But people tend to flip out over him granting that Jesus was actually nailed to a cross, died, although he won't say died. He'll say that die means that God hasn't restored your soul after taking it away and stuff like that. So anyway, he has all these technical definitions, but basically he's agreeing with Christians that Jesus was nailed to a cross, that he biologically died, and that God raised him later. So, but people flip out over that. It's interesting to note, though, that our earliest actual record of exegesis of Surah 4, verse 157, which Muslims generally interpret to mean that Jesus didn't die, our earliest exegesis of that doesn't come from a Muslim. It comes from John of Damascus. He's the one who says that Islam teaches substitution theory. And later Muslims did teach substitution theory. So the question is, where does the idea that this is teaching substitution theory come from? Because you can interpret it that way, but you can also interpret it otherwise. So maybe on my channel next week, we'll go through what Sheikh Imran Hussein said, and maybe we'll look at what John of Damascus said. Anyway, maybe next week, because we are approaching Easter. Maybe we'll talk about that stuff next week on my channel. That'd be interesting stuff.
Yeah, that'd be fun. So yeah, the whole the work of his is concerning heresies, and he has a chapter, or he refers to Islam as the heresy of the Ishmaelites, and there he then explains the wickedness of the beliefs of those heretics. So there is an early view, by a Christian authority figure who refers to Islam as a heresy of Christianity, and a pretty bad one to that, which is very interesting.
That would be an interesting title for like a video or even a live stream one day, where we just focus on it. Like, is Islam a Christian heresy or something like that?
Interesting stuff. And finally, does 929 refer to 3 separate types of targets? It just refers to those who, I mean, it counts several conditions, right? I mean, we're talking about the verse that that mentions fight those who don't believe in Allah, and it just mentions conditions and says fight those who do not believe in Allah and His Messenger and in the last day, and who do not accept what Allah and His Messenger have ordained, and those among the people of the scripture, so Christians and Jews, who do not adopt the religion of truth, so Islam, from the Muslims. But these are, this is the criteria, and anyone who falls within these categories is an enemy and must be fought and subjugated unless they leave their beliefs and convert to Islam. That's what the verse says. Anything you want to add, or have I expressed it perfectly as always?
Yeah, it's just I'm not sure what this person's referring to, whether it's like the groups Jews and Christians, and he's asking, is there a third group like Zoroastrians or something like that who'd be included there, or if he's talking about like what you meant with those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which have been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, because it does give three sort of.
Hey, do you remember our debate with Nader Ahmed and the other guy? And I kept pressing them on, what does the verse say? What does it say? Whom does it tell you to fight? And they kept going around.
It's not about what the verse says.
Man, it's so obvious and so painful. You put them on the spot and you give them the Quran itself, and it says, what does the verse say? Whom does it tell you to fight? Those who don't believe. So whom does it tell you to fight? Well, we have to read the Quran in context and look at other verses. Don't look, just tell me what the verse says. Well, times and this and that. Man, why can't you just be honest?
Yeah.
Why can't you be honest? Anyway, with that said, we are concluding the most popular weekly show on YouTube and soon in the whole world now, unless there's anything else that we want to talk about, anything else we want to address. Sarah Rainey said dancing is fun. No idea what it has to do with anything, but I appreciate it. And yeah, with that said, I think, in my opinion, Hamza Yusuf is an interesting character. I still respect the guy. I still would love to sit down and have a conversation with the guy. I think he's a very nice guy, despite Islam, and that his ideas on Islam are simply not very much in alignment with Islam, how it really is according to the scriptures. And even the traditionalist Muslims today would vastly disagree with him, and they blast him like they're like Kikichu here. And I think he's not being entirely genuine in his presentation of Islam, but that's just what Islam is.
Yep, same thoughts.
And David would agree with me with every single word. And with that, we want to say thank you, everybody. And David agrees with that as well. And David also agrees with the final thoughts that we want to add here, which are,
as a Christian and an atheist working together, we don't agree on everything, but we do agree on this. Stay away from Islam.
Stay away from Islam. Well, I didn't actually push the button yet because I wanted to play something else. I wanted somebody else to say stay away from Islam for us. I will end it with that. How about that? Okay. I love how David is waiting here for the live stream to finish. Here. I want this guy to tell you what to do.
Whatever he says, we're going to do.
Okay.
Stay away from Islam. So many of them.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's it.
If he says so.
Yeah, stay away from Islam.